لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. Omar Qureshi has been with us from Friday, and there was a very beneficial seminar that we had yesterday on understanding prophetic ethics, and Shaykh Omar is returning back to the United States this afternoon. But before he goes, we wanted him to share some advice on what he would advise as a scholar and teacher on how we can live an upright, principled life as people of faith in these times.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. It's a big topic, but we'll see what we can do, inshallah. SubhanAllah. I would say one of the fundamental principles to keep in mind in our times in particular, the situation that we find ourselves in, is to understand and be fully convinced that what is our definition of truth. Oh, so can you hear fine? Oh, okay. I don't know. Is to understand that truth. What is it that? What do we understand when we say the word truth? What it means? What's signified by this word? And that we have to search for the truth in our lives. Because many of our problems that arise in the area of ethics, it stems from an epistemological problem which rests on the denial of truth.
What is an epistemological problem?
What's an epistemological problem? Oh, sorry, okay. An epistemological problem is a problem that epistemology relates to, we know, and how do we know what we know? How do we know what we know? In what way do I know Shaykh for us? In many different ways, alhamdulillah, and Allah increased the number of ways, inshallah, that we know Him. How do I know this cup of water exists? In what way do I know? That I observe it, so this is observed knowledge, and then I have a concept of the cup and water. So epistemology is a branch of, is a science that investigates the way, what does it mean to know something, what are the various ways of knowing something, what can we know, what can we not know, all of those type of issues that are very important. And that serves as the foundation for, that's why if you read a book of Kalam, if you read a book of Usul al-Fiqh, if you read a book of theology, if you read a book of legal theory in our deen, they immediately start with the types of perception a person has, what are the various ways of knowing. Why? Well, because that's the foundation upon of the entire science. And you have to establish the various means of knowing, and then from there we can start to build the science. So for us, truth is very important. We should never give up on the notion. We should never hear from Muslims, and unfortunately we do, but well, that's what you think is true, and what I think is true is something different, and we can't really talk to each other. We can't really live with each other, because what does it mean to be in a community? When we say we want to live together, well, the word community entails that there's something common between the members of that community. That's what, and it's not just a physical place that you share with another person, although that is there. It's not just the same building, like what's bringing us here, right? What is binding us all together, and what determined that we are here together in this place today, not somewhere else. Well, it's not just a building, it's not just the weather, it's not just, there's many other things that have brought us together. Underlying all of those things, right, happens to be that we share certain beliefs and a vision of reality and truth about the world and the purpose of life we share. And we are all, inshallah, engaged and on this path to achieve, our purpose for which we were created for. That's what it means to be a community. And when, due to the position that various people have on truth now, that it doesn't exist, and you hear famous figures, Oprah Winfrey saying, it's your truth that we want to hear, it's your truth we want to hear, you have to voice your truth. That's a very, philosophically, a very problematic statement to make. So there's everybody has their own truth, there's no such thing as the truth. How do you live an ethical life based off of that? Well, the type of ethical life you do live, that people do live nowadays, is what they will call authenticity. You have to be authentic. Now, we're not talking about an authentic hadith, right? We're talking about authenticity now entails you being true to who you are. That's what the ethical life now in our culture is. It entails finding out who you are, doing what you want to do, and as long as you're doing what you will, what you are, the activities and the actions and the thoughts and that you are engaged in is based on your will, not somebody else's. It cannot be external to you. Meaning, you're doing what you want to do. You're not doing what a political system tells you to do, what culture tells you to do, what religion tells you to do, right? These are all what your parents tell you to do, what your colleagues, what your friends tell you to do. These are all external to you. If you are living a life in which you are doing what other people or external agents, right, tell you to do and way to live, you're not being true to yourself. You're not being authentic. You're not being ethical. Being authentic and being ethical now in our culture entails that you have to do what you should be living according to the way you want to live. Now this is a problem then, because now how can you be together? How can you build a community on this principle? And how can you build a community? What is it that brings us together? And this is a problem for contemporary democracies, right? This is a big problem. And they know this is a problem, hence they develop theories of multiculturalism, right? Hence one of the biggest problems is, ta'addud al-adyan, like the plurality of religion, plurality, not just of religion anymore, but, race now becomes a problem, histories, ethnicities, how do we understand them? They all become a problem. How do we live together? Because nothing brings us together. There's nothing in common anymore. Even our notion of a human being varies, and it's so different. That can't even bring us together anymore. So we live in, it's a pretty difficult time. But what's the root of all of this? Allahu Alam, in my understanding, is an epistemological problem, that of truth. That's the root. So holding on to that. And there are three principles that, you should know that relate to the truth, and they're called laws of thought in Western philosophy. But Sheikh Mustafa Sabri, radiallahu anhu, mentioned he's one of the great Ottoman scholars. I think he passed away in I want to say 64. No, that's Said Nursi. 1934, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that one. But he was an incredible theologian, and he wrote in one of his works on theology, he wrote that the basis of all rational thought is what's called the mabda'u adamu tanaqud, the principle of non-contradiction. Very important, right? And from this principle of non-contradiction, all of rational thought arises, and it follows from that. And so, why was he concerned with this? Well, it's for similar reasons, I think. This is, I think he was foreshadowed, he saw, where the world was headed. And he was worried about this. And so to talk about these things, and in other words, to make sure that, we don't fall into kind of the culture that we're in now. So if you can affirm that that there is a principle of non-contradiction, and that's how we can speak to each other, and that's what grounds reason, It's one of the laws of thought. Then we can start talking, and we can have notions of truth. And we can share in this. And this is what, it's rationality, so this is what brings us all together. The other two principles are the principle of identity. And what that means is, if I say A, I mean A. A is A. It seems pretty simple, but it's actually fairly profound. In other words, if I'm speaking, and if I say this cup, you don't understand from this another cup, right? Now it's a blessed cup, mashallah. So this is and so the principle of identity.
But this cup is having an identity crisis.
Yeah.
It says coffee is always a good idea, but there's green tea inside.
So the reality of the cup is green tea.
So what's the identity of it, though?
Yeah. Well, the cup is the cup, right? That's the thing. The law of identity is that, and when I say, practically speaking, if I'm speaking about this cup, it means that I'm not speaking about any other cup. That's what the law of identity. If I say this cup, I mean this cup, and by implication, no other cup other than this cup, right? This is the second law of thought. And the third law is the principle of the excluded middle, which is a statement, and here it is, right? A statement is either true or false, and there's no in between. That middle option is not an option in reality. So statements are true, or propositions will be true or false, and there's no third possibility, right? And hence, also, a statement can't be true or false. The same statement cannot be true or false in the same way, in the same understanding, at the same time. And that goes back to the principle of contradiction. This will help us now to say, okay, we can actually, talk with each other. We can understand each other. We're not just expressing our wills when we say or we take ethical positions. It's not just an expression of my will, what we spoke about emotivism, where saying murder is wrong is basically saying, I don't like murder, or murder actually is not right or wrong, it's just an expression of my will, my desire, I just don't like murder. Well, what if someone does like murder? Well, then you can say murder is good, right? So this is the absurd situation that we find ourselves in. And all of this stems from of not adhering to these laws of thought. So this causes a lot of ethical problems, and then it does cause identity problems as well. Now you have people who, they say they're in the wrong body. Well, which body should you have been in, right? I mean, you have to have some point of reference, And and there's a lot of conversations where people, they don't know who they are. They want to. I was once in a graduate class, I remember, and I was doing my PhD, and it was a very, very intelligent colleague in our class. She was a math teacher at a local independent school in Chicago. And we had to present our papers. I presented mine, and she presented her. She was telling me about her paper, and she's like, "Omar, just wait until we get to class, and I want to see your reaction." And we were very, very close. She was a math teacher, and I was a science teacher, and different schools, but we got along very well. And so her paper was basically her thesis that she was arguing was that I want to eliminate the word woman from the English language. And so the professor, looks at me. I'm just looking. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be an interesting 3 hours. So that was her goal. Well, why? And it's very interesting, And this shows you how when there's confusion about these terms, it leads to a lot of ethical problems. And hopefully, this will, make this issue concrete. The reason why she wanted to eliminate this, the reasons, not her thesis, but the reasons, I can sympathize with, and I can probably agree. She said that she wants to remove this word from the English language because it means so many different things to different people. It's these fluid plastic terms, and it becomes meaningless then. But then people use this term to impose ways of living and expectations, social expectations on others. So she shared a story about her life, and she said that, she was a math teacher, she got married, her and her husband, They didn't, they were living in accordance with, how families should live, in 21st century, right? Yeah, in the 21st century, and with the roles that they felt were appropriate, meaning that the roles that they were living according to their own understanding of how a husband and wife should live. But then, and their parents were very happy with this. They're very, liberal individuals, liberal families too. All of a sudden, she wanted to quit her job. Why? Because she wanted to have a child. Her and her husband agreed, we want to have a child. And I want to stay home with my child and take care of my child. And the husband was fine with it, and she wanted to do this. And she's relating this about herself, why she wanted to write and why she's frustrated with this term woman and she wanted to eliminate it. And she said, and this is, mind you, this is a liberal family, and who gave her the hardest time for this? Well, her own parents and her in-laws gave her the hardest time, saying, no, but you're a woman. You shouldn't be at home. It's not your role. She's like, but I want to be at home. She's like, no, this is not what you're supposed to be doing as a woman in the 21st century. You're supposed to have your own life. You're not supposed to be tied down by these things. And she got really frustrated, and her parents were not supportive of her, and neither were her in-laws supportive of her. And so they were it kind of became reversed. There were these new gender roles and that were assigned to this term, this word woman, and then new expectations were assigned to it, and then they were being imposed, but then she didn't like them, and they were still restricting her. So she's like, so then there became a whole debate saying, well, why can't a woman do this? It became reversed. Why can't a woman stay home and take care of her child? It's like, but wait. And we're arguing things and the parents were like, wait, we fought for this, because they're from the 60s in the States. We fought for all these things, and now you're just going back and, undercutting all the efforts that we've done to free women from all of these things. And she's like, well, no, I want to do this. And so then she became really frustrated. She said the root of the problem was this. So she couldn't live the life she wanted to live, what she considered ethical, due to these problems that that come about from rejecting notions of truth and having stable categories of gender, of what it means to be a man and a woman, a family, a husband, a father, a son, a daughter, in-laws, uncles, aunts. When these are not stable categories anymore, you have nothing in common to build with, and you can't live your life in this way. People now are in psychosis, they're in neurosis, they don't know how to make sense of their own acts. And they do acts that they sometimes don't even know why they're doing it. And they're trying to figure things out. And that's a really unfortunate situation that we're in. So know the principles of truth. Know that there is such a thing as the truth, and we should be searching for their criterion for the truth. When I say a statement, murder is wrong, it has to correspond to something. The term murder has to correspond to some concept. The term wrong has to correspond to some concept. And then are we affirming or negating these two concepts? When we're predicating wrongness of murder, are we predicating that, or are we not? So this is very important. And so this is hence, studying and studying correctly will eliminate, hopefully, inshallah, a lot of these problems. And you'll be able to understand, unfortunately many Muslims now, because we live in this culture and we imbibe a lot of the assumptions of this culture that we're in, a secular culture, when we come to the Quran, I've always wondered, many Muslims, shy away from the Quran, not because they're not religious people, but when they read the Quran, it's so foreign to them, the terms, the categories, because they haven't lived this life. They haven't lived with this way of thinking, right? And so when they read the Quran, it creates what I call inner turbulence. They know this is the word of Allah, they accept it, but then there's certain things that are like, this doesn't make sense to me, right? And some people, it encourages them to say, okay, I have to change something. There must be something wrong about the way I'm thinking. And hence I need to conform to the Quran, which is the correct response. And I need to learn more, and I need to study. But many other people are like, no. Right? And so hence, how do we teach the Quran, how do we teach the hadith becomes of central importance in our time. And we won't see some of the, as I shared in the I was reading some statistic that I were talking with Sheikh Talal last night, where there's a 50% in Muslims in America, the number of Muslims in the United States, there's a 50% increase of people accepting Islam. But there's a 23% statistic of 23% of second-generation immigrants who are leaving the faith. That's something that we should be worried about. Why? Right? And I believe because they can't make sense how to live in a way that is truly reflective of the Quran in contemporary society. So we have to work on this. It's something very serious, or we're going to see this trend. Inshallah, it doesn't increase. Inshallah, it decreases. But the same thing in Turkey. Many individuals, Muslims in Turkey, younger college students, they're not becoming atheists or leaving the religion. Well, they're becoming deists, right? Where I believe in God, but Islam, I'm not too sure about that, right? And they can't relate to the Quran. They can't relate to the Sunnah anymore. So part of this is we have to figure out, I believe the root of the problem is epistemology, and that entails that we start living with the categories of the Quran and the Sunnah. We start living with those categories, and we use those terms and the classifications that the Quran and the Sunnah uses. Right? Where Muslims now, if we live in societies where the term sin is not even used anymore, itham, right? And then you go to the Quran, and the Quran is talking about sin. Why? Why aren't we using these terms anymore, right? And when you eliminate a term from your culture and your community, then the concept of sin is gone as well. With removing the term removes the concept, because the concept is tied to the term, right? So language is important. You remove these terms, you remove the concepts, then you're living your life without sin, without the concept of sin. You're probably committing numerous sins, but you don't sense that anymore. You see? So it directly impacts how we live. And hence the importance of studying the Quran correctly with proper scholars who understand the Quran and who understand our current situation that we find ourselves in, and understanding the hadith. We should never be disconnected from the Quran and hadith. Interesting thing I found with high schoolers, in the Muslim in the school I used to be a principal of. Very interesting thing I found taking place. When there was a class, we have Islamic studies class. You study your fiqh, you study your aqidah, and these things, sirah and akhlaq as well. But then, you study sirah, meaning the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and akhlaq, ethics, and aqidah, your core beliefs, doctrine, that we. So when we're studying these, students were, they were taking them, but some of them were excited about the class, some of them were not. But we introduced a class for our juniors and seniors, it's called Quranic Studies, where you're just studying the Quran in translation. In translation. We picked a good translation. I believe Abdul Halim, the Oxford translation. I believe that's no translation is going to fulfill, but that's a fairly strong translation of the Quran, and it allows for exploring of the different possible meanings of the Quran. And that was the only text for the Quran for the class. You had the translation of the Quran, and then a dictionary, right? Arabic to English dictionary. Students have taken Arabic prior to entering that class, and this was. I thought students may not like this class, and I was thinking, they might struggle with it. It turns out that this was the most, sought-after class in the entire school by teenagers. And then the next year, when we had to register students, we had like double the number of students who wanted to register for the class the following year, because they told each other this was a great class. And so I was like, this is strange. So I looked at some of the numbers of our counselor, and I said, why is this happening? So I went in and I asked the students, I go, well, what is it about the class that you like? And they said, well, we're finally reading the Book of Allah. We're finally asking questions. We're finally looking at these, and keep in mind, so, and it just allowed them to explore the questions the Quran is asking them. And one of the most beautiful questions the Quran asks is, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Where are you going? This is a question the Quran asks. What a profound question. And then this allows students to now explore the answers to this question. And see, well, how does the Quran itself answers this question? Well, how does the Quran? And it provides purpose to life. And then you can build your ethics now from this. You know how to live. Very profound questions. And if the Quran asks these questions because they're supposed to be answered, and you're supposed to live your life with these answers. And, in a democratic society, the good life is to, not find the answer, but be on the search. As long as you're searching for what the good life is, that's all that matters. Whether you found the answer and living in accordance with that answer, that's not the point. Quran is saying, no, you live with the truth of what constitutes a good life. That's a good life, living, not just searching for it. You have to find the answer. We're not here just to search, we're here to find the answers, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us those answers, and they're in the book of Allah, and they're in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And therefore, so when these students were directly engaged with the Quran, very profound, and look at their response. It's almost like, you actually have to force students sometimes you have to force students to take Islamic studies. Here we had to do the opposite. It's like, well, sorry, the class is closed. They're like, could you please put another section? Could you please add this? Well, it's okay. We'll sit on the floor in the class. There's no room there. It's like, hold on a second, But they had this joy, and I believe this is the barakah of the Quran. It's kalamullah. In the end of the day, it's not the words of some philosopher. It's the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And so, this is the impact that it has. And so having that relationship to the Book of Allah is essential. You don't have to learn Arabic to have a relationship with the Book of Allah. My mother doesn't know Arabic, right? But she reads the Urdu tafsirs, and her relationship to the Book of Allah is immense, right? And when you look at all Muslim cultures, right? Urdu-speaking culture, Turkish cultures, African, Swahili, all these cultures, they all have a deep connection to the Book of Allah, yet they don't know Arabic. Right? So to understand Allah's book, you don't have to master the Arabic language. Right? You can understand the book at a particular level that will, impact your life, where you can understand this text. That's important. And so every culture I've been, if you go to different Muslim cultures, whether they know Arabic or not, most of them don't. They all have a relationship with the Book of Allah. That's a beauty, right? And meaning that, and so studying Allah's book, and we're not talking about getting into the nitty-gritties of what the grammatical structure is, what the aspect, the rhetorical figures being used in this verse. Those are all for a mufassir. So who you study the Quran with, that person should know. The teacher should know those things. But building your vocabulary, understanding what these verses are saying, understanding the discourse of the Quran and what it's asking you and how it's asking you and what answers it's providing, the stories of the Prophets ﷺ, and what lessons that they should be learning from them and studying their lives, that you don't need a mufassir to do. You should. Who? Oh, mufassir is, sorry. And a person who's a Quranic exegete who's expert in interpreting the verses of the Quran. So develop this relationship with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read it. Read this book. SubhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever reads the Book of Allah, reads a verse, for every letter they get a harf. For every letter they get reward. For every single letter. And the Prophet ﷺ wanted to explain, he said, Alif Lam Mim is not one harf, it's Alif is a harf, Lam is a harf, Mim is a harf. He didn't say, you get reward if you understand it. You get reward just for reading it. It's amazing. And Imam Ahmad radiallahu anhu, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he had a dream in which he was speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in that dream he asked him, what's the quickest way to reach you, to be close to you? And he goes, through my book. Right, through my book. And you see this impact on young Muslims. And so this is a very important way. We cannot lose that connection with our book. This is our book, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. And this is our way out. And so studying the Book of Allah and teaching that and using the categories. There are people who they want to do away with certain terms in the Quran. I met certain Muslims, in our times, the word kufr and kafir, we shouldn't use those terms at all. We should actually eliminate those terms from our vocabulary. Okay. The term kufr and kafir, these are terms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to describe people who don't believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? How can you exclude these terms from our vocabulary? How do you understand iman without kufr? They're relational terms. How do you understand belief? What are you going to do with Surah Al-Kafirun? You're going to exclude this surah from the Quran? So that's not the correct response. The correct response is, well, let's understand these terms. Interestingly, too, and some people are coming with a good intention, why we should, and their intention is the way people use the term kufr and you're a kafir, they use it in a very derogatory manner. Like, yeah, kafir, it's like swearing at somebody, insulting them. It's like, that, there's no doubt in the Hanafi, I have permission to convey a Hanafi opinion, inshallah. In the Hanafi school, right, and in the Shafi'i school, and I imagine, no one would disagree with this, to say, yeah, kafir, in a way that's derogatory to a non-Muslim, to speak to them, yeah, kafir, in that way, it's sinful, right? Because it hurts them, it's ida, right? And so you're not supposed to do that. But as a descriptive term, in the sense that, yeah, we have people who believe and people who don't believe, and this is what the Quran is using for this group of individuals, we should not try to eliminate that, right, from our vocabulary. So having this Islamic language, Islamic vocabulary of our terms, you see this in every Muslim culture. You can go to Singapore, to Malaysia, to China, all the way to Africa, and should be in the United States as well. When you see Muslims, they all have a very common core set of vocabulary that they use. And that's all coming from the Quran and hadith, no matter where they are. And why is that important? Because, and that's what I intend by Islamic language, right? Why is that important? Because when you have that language that's common, that means you have the common concepts and the common categories as well. And you can live according to those concepts and categories. So what we consider to be good, what we consider to be bad, what we consider to be, obviously the whole usage of wajib, makruh, and haram, and halal, and all of these terms, obligatory, things are lawful, unlawful, things that are forbidden, good and evil, itham, all of these terms, are all there, and they inform a Muslim community, and we can live together with these common concepts. And so that's the big ethical challenge, that I think we find ourselves in. And I think that's the solution is there. It's not without a solution. Those are the beginnings of the solution to this problem. And so learning directly the Quran, is important. We shouldn't be detached from the Quran and the vocabulary of the Quran. We should be reading that and thinking and using the language of the Quran correctly, of course. There's a very good work. It's called Al-Mufradat, by Aragab Isfahani. He was one of the great scholars of ethics, of the Arabic language, and the Quranic exegete as well. And it's just every single word in the Quran he's collected, and he's given a very thorough lexical analysis of the word, and then he's also given how the word is used in various Quranic verses, and how the same word will change in different verses of the Quran. Inshallah, it should be worthy of translation to start this project, and to make sure that we have the correct understanding of the words of the Quran. And and even the text that we read for an ethics, a lot of it is here's hilm, and here's a definition of hilm. So we're using the same words, right? Hilm meaning clemency or forbearance, and here's a definition of forbearance in our ethical tradition. So a lot of it's just getting the words right, and the fact that we're even speaking of the word virtue, fadila, that's absent, right, in our contemporary culture. So even language is very important, because what ties down concepts are words. So it does matter what words we use, and it does matter what words we exclude from our discourse and how we speak with each other. At the same time, using words correctly is equally important, right? So language is, I think, a very important place to start living that ethical life. inshallah. Allahu alam, I'm just speaking, so I'm sorry. Yeah.